Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this quarterly energy and climate call, September 18th. And let's move on. So why don't we start by we'll do some introductions. Uh, just throw in the chat, your name, your role, location, and we'll just say a main topic of interest. And when I say that, I'm thinking like dirty fuel and then a specific type of dirty fuel or clean energy, a specific type of clean energy, clean transportation, whatever. But you can put anything you want in there. And just to so everybody knows who I am. I think everybody on this call knows who I am, but I'm Nate Regal. I'm the clean energy program advocate for the Pennsylvania chapter of the Sierra Club, and I'm located right outside of Harrisburg. And why don't everybody that's going to be speaking tonight, go ahead and introduce yourselves if you would. I know Kelsey has a slide right after mine, so I'll call so that way we don't have to popcorn this around. So how about Kelsey? Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, y'all. Kelsey Krebs, she, her pronouns. I am the senior campaign representative with the Dirty Fuels campaign at Sierra Club, based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is Shawnee Lenape lands. I'm coming to hear all things dirty fuel interest, specifically abandoned and orphan wells, are more my bread and butter right now. And I'm trying to think there was one more thing that I wanted to flag here, and now I can't remember it. So I will go to Bill.
I am Bill Saby. I'm in Montgomery County outside Plymouth meeting. I'm the conservation clean energy team lead with Ellen Foreman, and I'm really interested in community solar and how we can grow solar in the state. And how about Howard?
Howard Sherman. I'm co-chair of the Sierra Club Delco Green Team. I live in Lansdowne, and I'm on the Conservation Committee here. I'm sorry, the Conservation Committee Transportation Team. Got to get my levels of authority right. I'm interested in that and the energy transition.
Hi, folks. This is Jim Wiley. I live in Westchester, outside of Philadelphia. I'm the chapter conservation vice chair, and I try to facilitate a number of these conservation teams for the chapter. And I put in the chat that my thing is just general sustainability and transition to a more sustainable planet. Yeah. Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Al. I'm the chapter conservation chair, and I live outside of Harrisburg. My general interest is in air and water quality issues, though I'm interested in all climate issues as well as technology issues. So I guess um, um, have a wide range of interests.
All right. And I think that just leaves Patricia, if there's nobody else that joined.
Tricia Libby, volunteer with several environmental organizations, can't afford membership. I'm from Philadelphia. Main topic of interest is trying to get rid of fracking, but I'm really getting scared about all of the hydrogen hubs they're talking about bringing around Philadelphia, the rest of the state, and the country. Community solar would be wonderful too. I left a message with Food and Water Watch today for if anybody watched their webinar this afternoon about fracking across the country.
All right. Well, thank you all for those introductions. And I think now we can, but just to go over a brief agenda here. One thing that I like to do is just provide an update, and when it says staff, that's, primarily Kelsey and I, what we're working on regarding energy in the chapter. And then if you were on this call 2 times ago, we did the same type of format where we gave this type of update and then heard the current events coming from the conservation teams and everything. But one thing that I like to look at is the gaps of what Kelsey and I are not working on, but are still important topics. Because to me, that's I look at that as a opportunity for engagement. Then some legislative topics. It's toward the end of the session, so I don't know if we want. I tried to delete hot because it was legislative hot topics throughout the presentation, and I missed it here, so it still says legislative hot topic. But being at the end of the session, I don't know how hot some of the topics are, but and then we'll go over some summaries from the clean energy, dirty energy, the transportation, and the climate teams, opportunities for volunteer activity, and then Jim, you threw in at the end, I think, a whole bunch of slides about webinars. So we'll hear about webinars, and then we just have a little at the end, of the what's coming up next for the next meeting. So, and spoiler, we don't know yet. We'll discuss that. All right. So for me, for those of you who, I just introduced myself earlier as the clean energy program advocate. But the one way I try to explain that to people, because what does that mean? That can mean a whole lot of different things. As I think of it as, three main buckets: building electrification, clean transportation, and then renewable energy. So under each one of those buckets, I have a little bit of flexibility. But when it comes to like building electrification, one of the programs that I'm trying to keep my eye on is the home energy rebates program that the Energy Programs Office at DEP that they're going to roll out, and that's a federally funded program, so that we'll have maybe some opportunities to influence that program, and then to help with the spreading the word for implementation throughout the state. And when it comes to the clean transportation for all, my main priority there is the advanced clean trucks rule. But then as a way of, we'll say, facilitating advanced clean trucks is the thought of working with the Public Utility Commission and trying to put some thought into how to plan for EV charging infrastructure, the demand in the future, and how that would impact utilities. And then with clean energy, a few of us mentioned community solar. So that is one of my main priorities is community solar. And we'll see that, when we get to the legislative updates. The press, the Pennsylvania Reliable Energy Sustainability Standards, which is, we'll say, the new AEPS, that's a priority of mine. Jen Quinn is working very closely with Press and Pacer. But under Press, the nuclear comes up every now and then now. So now we're back to I've been doing a little bit of research and into some of the discussions about what the implications are with nuclear in Pennsylvania. Pacer, the whole thing with the carbon cap and invest program. The idea that our preferred option would be Reggie, but if we don't get Reggie, Pacer is a good backup, but Reggie is still the preferred. So still rooting for Reggie and still working on hopefully getting that to be a reality in Pennsylvania. And then the one, we'll say, catch-all category that I work on is the clean communities. The Community Advocates Program is what the national calls it, National Sierra Club. We branded it Clean Communities, for Pennsylvania, and that's just a statewide implementation of IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the bipartisan boy, now I'm blanking out, infrastructure law. Am I right there? So the funds those programs that are energy related, trying to make sure that we maximize that money coming into Pennsylvania and maximize the positive impact along Sierra Club's priorities. And with that, I think, and my slides are boring, so I apologize, but that's the way my slides are. And then you have this really nice, aesthetically pleasing slide, so I pass it on to Kelsey.
Oh, thanks, Nate. Hi, y'all. Um, Folks know me from who's here, but mostly working on the dirty fuel side and that dirty energy aspects of the opposite, I guess you could say, or what's supplying some of the other dirty infrastructure that's going on in Pennsylvania. And apologies, y'all, my words are a little minced there, but some of the main aspects of that are fighting dirty gas export projects. And so anything that is a pipeline expansion project aimed for export or a liquefied fracked gas facility aimed for export are some of what we're working to fight against in Pennsylvania, as well as Nate mentioned the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, or the bipartisan infrastructure law, is leaving a different legacy. It's giving us an opportunity to fund some really cool programs. And in Pennsylvania specifically, I know I mentioned in my intro, our abandoned and orphaned well issue. And so for some of my work related to that, getting to address the backlog of our orphan wells here as a historically extractive state for a very long time. And that third piece, that third chunk of kind of what I've been working on is addressing policy loopholes or regulatory rulemakings that are coming up that impact our dirty energy issues. So hazardous oil and gas waste, low oil and gas well bond amounts, which is like the money that folks have to set aside to clean up a project at the end, which in this case, it would be a well by well instance. And like I said, any upcoming rulemaking. So some updates from the last time I met with folks are going to be some clicks that I'm going to ask Nate to click through here. But that first one is that Regional Energy Access Expansion Pipeline Project, or the Transco extension that we've been calling it. We actually got a really great decision out of the DC Court of Appeals that they vacated the decision from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that granted its permits to granted its certificates to operate. So there was it was about a month and a half time span that Transco, the company in charge of this expansion project, had to appeal that decision. They have filed a petition for rehearing as of September 13th. So we are still involved in legal battles in that particular instance, but a really great decision coming out of DC Circuit Court of Appeals. I don't know if that click worked through there, Nate.
I'll click now.
Oh, perfect. Can I have you click one more time? Thank you. So then one of the gas projects, the liquefied fracked gas facilities that we've been watching and fighting for the last few years, on their shareholder presentation back in August, announced that they may be thinking of different plans for the site in Wyalusing, Pennsylvania, that was going to be their liquefaction facility, have talked about it being a fast power facility to power data centers. So this would move the project from a dirty fuels perspective, but into more of a beyond coal perspective. But it still might mean that there's not a project up there that we've been fighting for the last few years. So a lot of this is being impacted by the LNG cause, which is really helping out Pennsylvania fight against a lot of these projects that were not aimed at protecting our residents anyways, and increasing our energy bills for when we have LNG for export. And then I'll be quick for the next two, I promise. So if we do one more click here, I am going to be working on an outing the weekend of November 16th at Moraine State Park, focused on our legacy issue extraction of oil and gas wells in the state of Pennsylvania. So if folks are coming out, that is also my birthday weekend, and that is also National Take a Hike Day coming up on November 19th later that week. So trying to combine a lot of different things and have some fun that weekend. And in the next section too, I've got another presentation coming up in October, is going to be the Clean Energy for All call. Is going to be a little bit more focused on some of our, what do you want to call it? Not clean energy for all, but definitely something that we all need to be concerned about, which is the hazardous oil and gas waste issue here in Pennsylvania. So if we could one more click there. you'll probably see some information coming into your inboxes for that webinar coming up. So those are my quick updates. And if you have any questions, happy to answer anything.
All right. All right. So here are some of the, we'll say, I like to think of them as being, they're important. It's just that like Kelsey and I may not have the opportunity to work directly on some of these. So it doesn't mean that they're not worth, working on or anything. It just means that we don't have the capacity to work on them. So thinking of like the EPA vehicle emission standards, one that I actually I get excited about stuff like this, and unfortunately I just don't have the ability to work on that right now. But the building codes, the like the EV infrastructure, and trying to put that into building codes as far as having new structures be EV charger ready, or the Pennsylvania appliance standards, which again, uh, I don't know why I get excited over weird stuff, but I get really excited over that. And unfortunately, I just don't, I can't work directly on some of these. And if anybody wants to pick that up and run with it, though, I think those are some pretty impactful areas, to put some effort. Unfortunately, right now, I think a lot of what we're going to be doing is uh, probably waiting until next year to find out, are some of these going to get, like reintroduced? Are they going to be priorities, what have you? Another topic here.
This is Tom. Can I interject something at the
Sure.
on building codes? I think the um, building trades unions might be interested in that because that means more work for them. So if we could partner with some of the building trades, then they might be willing to push for updated building codes on that.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't want to misspeak here. So the latest I heard with some of the building code, and that one, the one I have right there, that bullet is, for EV infrastructure specifically, is just what my thought there. And 100%, yeah. If we can get labor, talking with labor and getting, support, I think that'll go a long ways. Uh, there is unfortunately one area of codes that I was really excited when I was reading through some of the history in Pennsylvania to find out like, oh wow, we did adopt something that was pretty, we'll say recent. Unfortunately, it was held up in court. So there are some, I think they're like a electric code, but anyhow, uh, there's one set of codes that sounds like it's held up, due to a court case, but everything else sounds like that there might be opportunity, especially if you're working with, we'll say the PUC and trying to maybe look at it from a regulatory or a regulation approach instead of a bill. But all right, so then on to the rural electric cooperatives, and this one was neat because I just talked to, I think, primarily Jim. But we were just talking about the idea that rural electric cooperatives have a little bit of flexibility, and their ability to maybe incorporate something that looks like community solar might be an option, similar to the boroughs type of situation. Uh, and one thing that we just learned not too long ago is the rural electric cooperatives. Now I don't know the association, but uh, they uh, they just received funding from Department of Energy to incorporate more renewables, and they had a goal of, I think it was like 80% of non-carbon type of energy sources by, I forget which year, but that was just recently that came out, and it's exciting. And it's one of those though that I have not found any details on it. I have not, like, when you go to the Department of Energy, you I have not found their application or their plan or anything like that, just their goal. So hopefully, hopefully though that they'll put that money to good use, and maybe that goal will be achievable. And then, as we've heard earlier, these hydrogen hubs, they're definitely a concern for a lot of people. And when I say that it's a gap that staff is not directly working on, I put kind of, because every now and then there are meetings, there are calls that we, and it depends on where it's at in the state, which staff member participates. But we do have staff members that do participate in some of the calls, and then every now and then, so somebody from the whether it be the administration or or a legislator will reach out and ask, what's our opinion, or what do we think about certain things. So we're not directly working on hydrogen hubs, we'll say, as its own entity, but opportunistically, I would say staff are addressing that where we can. And do you have any? Because I don't think we have a separate slide for you for the gaps, Kelsey. Do you have any that you can think of that you want to throw in here while we're on this slide?
The hydrogen hubs is always mine. Whenever I think of like stuff that I'm not able to cover as well, just that I know is impacting a lot of the conversations in Pennsylvania, specifically with two different proposed projects. So you covered the one that I always think about in particular.
Right, so
All
we
right.
definitely talk about hydrogen hubs and the dirty energy team, and I don't know about the EV infrastructure codes, but if you're talking about EV ready ordinances, we've talked about that at the municipal level, not at the state code level, and the vehicle emission standards. And then, of course, we talk about nuclear, which I'm surprised you don't have that listed as well as something that kind of falls through the cracks. And we talk
Well,
about that.
and I can't go back because of the clicker, but that's why I did put it under like the press. So when nuclear does come up, that's we are addressing it from a chapter staff perspective, but it's from the press perspective, if that makes sense. It's through that.
Okay. Well, this is Tom again. In terms of elephants in the room that no one's addressing, it is nuclear, but it's the whole electric infrastructure where you have crypto mining and nuclear and AI and data centers where they're sucking all the energy out of the grid. And I think that is the big problem that we haven't been able to get a grasp on, and how much that's going to set us back in terms of renewables. Because the recent things that I've been reading is that they're thinking about reopening old coal-fired plants, reopening old nuclear plants, just to fill the need for this energy drain on the system. So
Yeah,
it's worth thinking about, and I think it's one of those things that might sidetrack our renewable energy goals.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is one where I think we're all familiar, with an increase in demand and a forecast increase in demand, but thinking of how that may impact our priorities and goals, I think is important. And yeah, we don't have that spelled out, as an issue as the demand on the grid and what that might do with power sources. So thanks for that. We'll have to add that on. I'll have to put that as a note. All right, let's move on then to make sure. All right, and here we are. See here, I did remove the hot from legislative hot topics because a lot of these aren't so hot anymore. But community solar, it is in the Senate right now. And last week was a week of action where a lot of people were contacting state senators, knowing that today was the first day back in session, I think, the 18th, right? Is it the? So anyhow, the idea was last week, while they're not in session, they're not actively working on stuff that are in session because they're not in session, but it's right before it started. So that way we get a hold of senators and put the topic on a front burner again. So that way, as soon as session starts, which again, I think it was today, community solar is on people's minds. So we're hoping that that still gets a vote, gets out of committee, makes it through the Senate and gets enacted. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's the hope. And Press and Pacer, they're still where they're at. Yeah, as far as uh, I've heard that we may have a committee vote on on press, but I'm not sure if we're gonna actually see that or not. That's just something that I heard, on the House side. So we'll see. Uh, but I think likely those will have to be reintroduced in January. Uh, but now for the good news, Solar for Schools did pass, and I think everybody on this call probably already knows about that. But uh, I have to say it because I'm excited about it. I think Solar for Schools is a great program. So that one did pass, and it got funded in the budget. The PA EV fee was enacted. That one we'll say is there's a reason there's no exclamation point after that one. I think it's important that money goes toward road maintenance and all that kind of stuff. I think that the anybody that wants to increase the amount of EV purchases in Pennsylvania wishes that the EV fee was a little bit lower. Oh, yep, and right there I do have the Senate is back. The House starts back on the 23rd, but not for voting meetings. The voting meetings start on the 30th. So we'll have like 1 week of just, I guess, informational hearings, that kind of stuff. All right, and making sure that I have everything because once I click, we're done. We're on to the next one. So, all right. So now I hope everybody that's on the call that's going to be giving a summary is ready because here we go. Clean energy, dirty energy, transportation, and climate. And just let me know when you need me to click and I'll click on to the next one. So let's see what.
So yeah, this is our team's area, the clean energy team. So a lot of this is our topics that Nate's already mentioned. We've been discussing these in our own meetings to see what we can do. We'd love to see community solar and press and pacer, just as Nate had described. So that's kind of hot topics for us and the Reggie lawsuit. So we're still interested in seeing that come to play. And the Solar for Schools, as was just mentioned, got the $25 million, and we're getting details by the end of the year. A regional concern is Center Region State College. They worked on developing, I think it's a 20 megawatt solar PPA, and they got 14 or so municipalities and schools to participate, and they had all agreed upon this, so they knew they had enough support going forward. But recently we heard that now there are some constituents that are against it, and they're going to township meetings and school board meetings to fight this. And so we're looking for extra support. The Moshannon Group, Ellen Foreman has put out a campaign call for people in that region that would be willing to help. And there's a link here to that document with that information. There's a organization meeting this Sunday So if you know anybody around State College that might be interested in supporting solar, let us know about that, and I can put you in touch with the right people. Also, then community choice aggregation for boroughs is a working group that's been pulling this together over the last 2 years, and we have, I forget, 8 or so boroughs that are interested, and it would allow the boroughs to control their own electricity purchasing and work with an administrator to make it as renewable as possible each time they do procurement. And even with that, in a lot of states where they have CCA, the CCA program has been able to stay competitive with the default supply that is provided by the local utility, and in most cases beat the cost for the residents of those communities. So we're looking hopefully for that to come to a decision with the PUC. We've got a good team and law firm that's working on this advocacy and getting back in their minds for that. And then the other one is the community advocates and the clean energy program that Nate's working on. The set of volunteers we've got across the state working on promoting the federal money for individual incentives and also for grants. And that's my update.
All right. Here we are on the dirty energy.
Yeah, I got a few notes I'd like to read. Here's some of the bigger topics that the Dirty Energy team has been talking about. The hydrogen hubs. In July, the OCED began awarding hydrogen hubs to begin work on phase 1. So we went from phase 0 to phase 1 in July. And phase 1 means solidified planning, development and design activities around site selection, technology deployment, community benefits and engagement, labor partnerships, and workforce training. So phase 1 will last from 12 to 18 months, and phase 2 is the actual project development. So I believe Mach 2 and Arch 2 still need to secure stronger financial commitments from the private sector investments before they can exit phase 1. And then fracking in Pennsylvania, of course, is the elephant in the room when it comes to talking about dirty energy in Pennsylvania. The Dirty Energy team has developed a webinar session in concert with the Center for Coalfield Justice to share some personal stories about the impacts of fracking industry in Western PA, and I'll be talking more about that webinar series in a minute. The next thing I wanted to share is about fugitive methane, and Nate, if you could click on that, click on that play button there, see what happens.
Every day, nearly 5,000 satellites orbit the Earth. Satellites are making possible groundbreaking advances in almost every industry. Some are used to predict the weather, others help us communicate. The latest frontier is the fight to stop climate change. MethaneSat is a unique satellite on a unique mission to reduce emissions of methane, a potent greenhouse gas. Human-made methane emissions are responsible for more than a quarter of the warming we are experiencing today. One of the biggest sources is the oil and gas industry, which releases at least 75 million metric tons of methane each year from wells, pipelines, and other equipment. When it launches, MethaneSat will locate and measure these emissions and identify their source. This will give companies and countries the unprecedented ability to fix problems quickly. Existing satellites can map methane emissions across large areas or measure them at set targets. MethaneSat will do both, with precision and at a scale never before achieved. MethaneSat will set a new bar for transparency and accountability by making the data available to anyone free of charge. Cutting methane emissions 45% by the year 2025 from the oil and gas industry alone will have the same 20-year climate benefit as shutting down 1/3 of the world's coal-fired power plants. With the help of MethaneSat, we can slow the rate of global warming and limit temperature increases sooner than we ever thought possible.
So that's methane stat. I believe it has launched and it is operational. I'm not aware that we've seen any data from it, but that's a project funded by our buddy Jeff Bezos. Yeah. I don't have an update on the LNG beyond what Kelsey offered, and the APS is now called Press. The status of Reggie is that it's been declared unconstitutional by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. However, the Shapiro administration has issued an appeal, which has not been scheduled for a hearing by the courts. And in parallel, there's this Pennsylvania only Reggie bill called PACER, right, that has been introduced. This is probably the best path for setting a price on carbon emissions for power plants in Pennsylvania. And then Tom talked about nuclear, and I just wanted to add that the PJM capacity market 9 times increase could open the door for extending the life or resurrecting some nuclear plants in Pennsylvania. And that's all I had for dirty energy.
All right, and I'm just going to throw out there a time check. We're at 7:48, so I'll go to the next one here.
Before you get there,
Oh,
just a
no.
correction.
Satellite.
How do I advance? Okay. There we are.
Just a correction on what Jim said. Reggie regulations have not been declared constitutional by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It was the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court that found them unconstitutional, and it's on appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So that's still alive in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Tom. Then to talk about transportation real quick. Let's see, as part of as Nate mentioned, as part of the budget deal in June, Pennsylvania established a fixed fee for EV owners to be paid as part of the annual registration, $200 in 2025, $250 in 2026. No consideration for miles driven or the weight of the vehicle, and no fees for out-of-state drivers on PA roads. So this replaces the alternative fuels tax, which is a voluntary program for EV owners, which nobody was doing. And then I also wanted to mention that this team's been developing a presentation on EV myths. And we've been talking about this on and off for a couple of years. So we're going to get serious about it and put together a webinar, which you'll hear more about in a minute. And that's it for that, Nate. Oh, so the climate change team has just started in the spring, and the first project is to develop a one-pager for volunteer tables to initiate the conversation about climate change. And as part of that, the team has developed this list of questions for other teams. We're kind of outsourcing some of the key facts or bullet points that we'd like to have on this one pager. And I just listed them there, the things that we farmed out to these other teams, and people are working on them, and the climate change team will be getting together this fall to try to put together that one pager. Okay.
Ready for the next one?
Yep.
All right.
All right. So this is the webinar series. We'll talk quickly about each of these on this chart. So we've got 7 webinars that we're going to be doing at lunchtime on Thursdays, with one exception, between October 17th and December 5th. I'll just read them off here. October 17th, we're going to have Dollars for Clean Energy, which is going to be the community advocates teams talking about it, giving an update on federal and Pennsylvania incentives for home, school, and community improvements from the Inflation Reduction Act and Pennsylvania programs. We're going to have Julia Knockley, Bill Saby, and Nate Regal speaking at that session. On October 24th, is a session called Counting Climate Deaths. We're going to have Dr. Christina Vanderpool, who is the first woman and first Democrat elected coroner of a suburban Chester County in over 2 centuries. So the premise here is until we know how many people are dying due to climate disasters and who they are, government officials and policymakers can and will ignore the existential danger of climate change. On November 7th, we're going to have a session on New Jersey offshore wind. Denise Brush from the New Jersey Sierra Club chapter is going to give us an update on recent progress in transitioning to renewable energy sources in New Jersey, including the current status of offshore wind projects and associated electric grid improvements, and summarize the state's recent progress on renewable energy goals, rollout of community solar, shutdown of fossil fuel and nuclear facilities, and consideration of hydrogen-based energy. Then on November 14th at lunchtime, we're going to have the Zero Waste team members talk about what the term zero waste means, talk about microplastics in our bodies, and being a better plastic-aware consumer. Karen Melton, Carol Armstrong, and Corinne DeTurl are going to present that. And then also on November 14th, but in the evening at 7 o'clock, Tom Au and Allison Zeckman are going to talk about air quality monitoring, what we can learn from what can we learn from local air quality monitoring, and how do we set up low-cost monitors to measure local air quality. And then on November 21st at lunchtime, we're going to have some representatives from the Center for Coalfield Justice giving us personal stories about the impact of fracking industry in Western PA and the deal with Governor Shapiro that Governor Shapiro seems to have made with CNX, which is a fracking company. And then lastly, on December 5th, we're going to have electric vehicle myths. So many people are still confused about whether electric vehicles are a good choice for their next purchase, because we see some conflicting information in headlines about EVs, about their maturity, their safety, environmental footprint. So this webinar will attempt to separate fact from fiction and cut through the hype from many angles. So Dennis Rowan, Fred Crable, and Max Turner are going to help us with that presentation. And I just wrote a blog post or an article for the Sylvanian that's going to be going out in the Sylvanian, and I'll put that blog post here. You can get an early look at that and that'll have links to registration pages for all those webinars. Okay. Any questions? Any suggestions? Anything I missed?
I do, Jim. For the Dirty Energy team, is anyone working on the methane released from home appliances and gas furnaces? That to me seems to be low-hanging fruit, and it's ripe for publicizing because it makes people directly sick. And PECO is still pushing rebates for people to install gas appliances. So I think that is a potential hot button issue.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. We have talked about it a little bit. It kind of crosses over with the air quality team. Indoor air quality, I think, is an important topic as well. So I agree with you, but we've only talked about it a little bit. I wanted to give a plug for the latest issue of Sierra Magazine, which has some fantastic articles in it. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at it. I just got mine the other day. It does have an article about removing gas from our neighborhoods block by block. It's not really a success story. It's about challenges, but it's still an interesting concept. If you think about um, uh, gas utilities that are needing to replace pipelines that are 50 years old, and would it be cheaper for them to buy us all electronic appliances than it would be to replace the gas lines in our streets? And on paper, it pencils out. And they tried it in a couple of places in California. And the showstopper is they need to get everybody on that block or everybody in that neighborhood to say, I'm okay with going electric and not using gas. And if one person says, nope, I still want my gas, then they got to run the new lines through that street. So, but that's an interesting thing. So I encourage you to check out the fall issue of Sierra Magazine. It's got this centerfold. It's got this game of life electrified. Pretty cool. So, what else?
Well, just opportunities to volunteer, and we've already touched on this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. Uh, if you're not in southeastern Pennsylvania, the Clean Communities Project is an opportunity to try to impact your school districts. Coming up, we're going to have municipal approach and eventually residential approach of trying to get those IRA and BIL funds and programs working in Pennsylvania. And if you are in Southeast, that's where we have community advocates for clean energy, uh, very active down there in the Southeast. And this, I'm just throwing this out there to socialize the idea. Tom mentioned it to me yesterday that a potential good use of a quarterly meeting would be to have it be a planning meeting. So that way all of the conservation teams would be in the same space together, talking about what their plans are for the next year. Excuse me, and that would in turn help out with chapter planning. So just throwing that out there as something that Tom brought up. I don't know how everybody feels about that, but now that we know that that's an idea, I figure from this point forward, we can email around to see what people think about that idea. And the thought behind that though is if we decide to go that route, and the next quarterly meeting would be a conservation team's planning meeting, it would be up to the individual conservation teams to do planning prior to that. So that way, when all the teams come together, they've already done their individual planning. So then it's more kind of reporting out, finding out like where the gaps are or what the needs are and all that kind of stuff. So uh, that was just an idea that I did mention to Tom that I would bring it up and see how we feel. But since this is the first time all of us have probably heard of it, I don't want to say like, what does everybody think about this? So instead, let's think about it a little bit, and I'll get an email out and try to gauge what we all think about that.
There was an email conversation, Nate, about having a December holiday party at Nate's house. Maybe you weren't on that distribution. I'm not sure.
No, it would be a really boring party, but that would be yeah, all
But if
right.
you'd rather have, a business planning meeting, all right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just think about it, and whenever the email goes out, the hey, thanks for attending, and here were the main points that we hit, all that kind of stuff for this. I'll throw that in the email again, just to like, all right, let's actually think about this and get some feedback, and so that way I know whether in December to try to find a guest speaker or whether we're going to be doing uh, more of a planning type meeting.
I have a question.
Sure.
As far as the webinars, what's being done to publicize the webinars beyond Sierra Club membership?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. I just got this blog post put together today. It'll go out in the Sylvanian, which is the first Monday of October. We can also do an email blast to, but again, to your point, that's to the Sierra Club community, and send it to the PA leaders list. But I've already encouraged a number of the speakers that are not, not Sierra Club folks to share it with their networks, like Coalfield Justice, or Dr. Vanderpool is going to share it with her email list. So, and then we can if I can put together a nice graphic, we can put it on our social media as well. Any other suggestions are welcome, and please feel free to push it to your networks.
Any possibility of putting the recordings for the webinars on YouTube?
Oh, absolutely. That's the plan. The webinars that we've done in the past are on the Pennsylvania chapter's YouTube channel. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
All right, and I think, yep. So here we have the calendar of upcoming events. So as I just mentioned, we do have the next quarterly one coming up in December, and I'm looking at the climate. I have not attended a climate call yet, but all right. And after that, details. Oh, and this is what Jim already went through. So I think we're at, what's that?
Yeah, I went through all this. I mean, you can
Okay.
click through them so you can see everybody's faces. Yeah.
And we'll get to the end just to make sure I'm not missing a slide. And this must be the end because it's not going any further.
Yeah.
And so now that we're at the end, I would like to thank you all for attending. Thank you for the dialogue. This has been a great call. And
Fast question.
oh, you have a question?
Can you send me contact information for the CACE? I've never heard about that group before, and I would like to be able to contact them. If you could email it to me.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll be
Okay,
glad.
thank you very much.
I can also email her too.
Okay.
Are you in charge, Bill?
I'm part of the teams along with Jim and Nate. So yeah, we'll get you the link.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. And with that, are there any last questions or comments? Because I know we started a little bit late, so I was trying to move pretty fast, and I didn't mean to either like brush anybody off or anything like that. So if there's any questions that I may have walked over you inadvertently or what have you, feel free to say, make any last comments or questions that we may have missed.